What's up, guys? Matt Mormon here with the ADP Average Dudes podcast, and a whole lot of stuff has happened over the last couple of days of NFL free agency. So I've been making some very quick hits here to just kind of get instant reactions out there. This is just going to be simply a compilation of all of those things put into one place. You can check out all of those on the YouTube channel. That's where I've been posting each of those kind of as they happen. But here you go for all of it, just a nice one place. Later this week, I will be going a bit deeper on my thoughts on all these things. I'm going to update and do a full fantasy football ranking here in late March and kind of get my more in-depth thoughts on all these landing spots and kind of where I feel about all these guys. But for right now, this is what I think. Let's start with some running backs first here. It's DeAndre Swift. First move I saw of the day were DeAndre Swift going to the Chicago Bears. As is the case with all free agent running backs, it's always going to be a little bit of a question as to how good these guys will be at that kind of advanced age by the time they hit the market. So there's that caveat first here of I'm never going to love these free agent running backs just because of that age factor. But as far as landing spots go and opportunity goes, I think this is a pretty good one for DeAndre Swift. You go to a Chicago team that now, as they will move on from Justin Fields, go to a rookie quarterback, it hopefully means they'll throw the ball to running backs more often. That was always kind of my thing last year when Roschon Johnson was kind of getting a little bit of hype and a little bit of love, was that he kind of profiled a little bit like a DeAndre Swift light. And I didn't love that with Justin Fields at quarterback because Fields you never saw throw to the running backs at all. He would just tuck it in and scramble. I do actually have some concerns about Caleb Williams wanting to throw to running backs. Just kind of in his tape, I feel like there's been a lot of times where he passes on that and goes ahead and chucks it further downfield. And never really wants to take the dump offs. Never wants to take the easy plays, wants to go for the deeper stuff. So I don't totally love that. I think Swift, he'll probably fall into a camp similar to what we said about Miles Sanders a year ago, right? And look at how that turned out. But I do think that's kind of the range he's going to be in as kind of an RB2 option come August. This does kind of really hurt Khalil Herbert, hurts Roschon Johnson. They kind of move into backup roles in that offense. We'll see if they make any other moves, but at least, hey, Caleb Williams should at least be able to have a couple of pass catchers now on that team. Next up, Tony Pollard. He signs with the Tennessee Titans. I hate this for Tyjae Spears, but I kind of am okay with the fact that his value is going to go down. Spears is a guy who I was really kind of touting as a potential guy for next year, real breakout, as he could kind of be the feature guy in the backfield. That's going to become a lot harder now with Tony Pollard being on this team as well, but perhaps there's a chance here of him still emerging as the lead running back and Tony Pollard being a bit more of a compliment. Pollard has really only been a workhorse one time, and we kind of saw how that went in Dallas, so maybe Tyjae still gets kind of the 1A to the 1B of Pollard. Not totally sure how I'm going to rank these two guys. I feel like at the moment, I'm feeling they're going to be very similarly ranked, with Pollard being a bit ahead of Spears at the moment in Tennessee, but they did also sign a center, so that helps, but they have a bad offensive line, so they're going to need to shape that up a little bit before we get too excited about either one of those guys in Tennessee. What else? Gabe Davis, that's the other one. That's the other big one I wanted to touch on this morning. He signs a deal with Jacksonville as the Jags just continue to not give Trevor Lawrence real number one weapons, but they rather give him a lot of number two options. Gabe Davis going to Jacksonville. I'm not into it for Gabe. It more just makes me disappointed because I feel like this means my favorite landing spot for a lot of these trade candidate wide receivers is now off the board. I don't expect them to both sign Gabe Davis and have Christian Kirk and trade for Brandon Ayuk or trade for T. Higgins now. That was kind of my favorite spot for any of those guys to land was to Jacksonville. And so that disappoints me. And that just seems like that real premier potential landing spot is just kind of off the board now. Gabe Davis, he's Gabe Davis, right? He's going to be a flex option wide receiver who on any given week, he's going to catch 0 passes, and then on any other given week, he's going to catch 4 for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. A lot of move around the NFL, non-fantasy related ones. Jonathan Grenard going to Minnesota is a deal I really like from Minnesota, just kind of basically tearing down from Danielle Hunter, but getting younger with that move to Grenard, so I like that quite a bit. Josh Jacobs expected to sign him now with the Green Bay Packers. So it's interesting in that such a young team, and Josh Jacobs, kind of a younger player for hitting the stage of his career because he did come in the league so young. Their oldest positional group, at least on offense, is going to be their running backs, right? When you look at how young all those receivers are, Jordan Love, of course, being young as well. The running back position, the position you probably don't want to have veterans on the depth chart for. The Packers are going to have both Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs now. I think Jacobs could just be really, really good in this offense with Jones kind of being the two. I think that's kind of was the hope and game plan way back when they drafted A.J. Dillon, is that eventually Dillon would be in this spot with Jones as kind of the lightning being the number 2 option. This could be really good for Josh Jacobs. Of course, as I mentioned in the previous video when talking about Swift and Pollard, there's always risk with these running backs at these ages. Even at 26 for Josh Jacobs, always going to be a little hesitant about that. However, 26 is not 28. And I think Jacobs could have a year or two here of really good run. And we know this is an offense that wants to run the football. Even when they haven't been great at it over the last couple of years at times, they have really committed to running the ball and keeping things easy for Jordan Love and taking the pressure off of him a little bit. I think this moves Josh Jacobs right back to where he would be in any kind of neutral situation, even positive. It very well could be the best offense that Jacobs has ever played in. I think that, touchdown opportunity should definitely be there for him. Aaron Jones has always been kind of a touchdown maker as well, though, so a little bit of competition there, and he may not catch a ton of passes because of Aaron Jones being there as well. I'll be updating my rankings quite a bit here in the coming days once this kind of gets settled out a little bit. I fully expect Josh Jacobs, though, to be like in that running back 8 sort of range for me. This is really an encouraging signing for him as long as no one else really comes into that offense and takes that away from him. I think this could be really, really good for him. And I think that this is one of the few times where a free agent running back, famous last words, this could be a free agent running back that actually kind of works out a little bit. The big fish now landing in free agency as Saquon Barkley lands with the Philadelphia Eagles and Kirk Cousins signing with the Atlanta Falcons. Let's do Saquon Barkley first. That was a bit more straightforward. Not a ton of ramifications as far as other players go. For Saquon, he goes right back up to that tippity top kind of area for me among running backs. I think he's probably going to be just outside the top 5 to me. For sure, McCaffrey, Bijan, Gibbs, Breece Hall. That's a pretty easy locked-in top 4 for me. I think Saquon's going to be right there in that range immediately after that. He may be 5th, actually. Think about it a bit more. I think he may slot right in that 5th spot. Last year in this offense, DeAndre Swift was a top 20 running back. And that really came without DeAndre Swift being a great fit for this offense. DeAndre Swift, very much a pass-catching running back, not a great runner of the football. And in this offense, even DeAndre Swift only got 50 targets. So that's one thing that for Saquon, I don't think is great because it's going to limit his pass-catching ability, but him being a better runner, a more efficient runner than Swift is going to help boost him up, though, in this offense. Should be plenty of opportunities for a ton of carries and very good with those carries as well. The offensive line in Philly, there's some question marks going on right now. Of course, Jason Kelce's a big retirement. I think that if the tush-push is not effective for Philly anymore, I think that's definitely going to help Saquon Barkley out a whole lot more than the situation that DeAndre Swift found himself in. And Saquon's coming from an offense where touchdowns really were not a thing he could rely on in the past, right? So Saquon has always kind of been a big-time pass catcher, but just a very good overall player. Even in a bad situation there in New York, he was always able to kind of find a way to come through for the fantasy owners. For me, like I said, I think he slots probably get right in that running back 5 slot. Now, let's shift gears. Let's talk Kirk Cousins, because this is the one that's going to have ramifications all over the place. Number 1, Drake London shooting up. I'm looking at Fantasy Pros right now, their dynasty rankings. They have Drake London at wide receiver 20. Just looking at the names immediately ahead of him, and DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, T. Higgins, and Nico Collins. Give me Drake London over all those guys. Now that we know Kirk Cousins is there, we don't know the terms of the deal yet. It's a 4-year deal. With the way Kirk Cousins has operated before, he's one of the very few players where it would not surprise me to see it be a true 4-year deal. Typically with NFL contracts, you can pretty much for sure shave off the last year, and kind of the second to last year is always kind of a bit of a question. The way that Kirk Cousins has operated, though, it could be a legit 4-year deal here, so we'll just keep an eye on that. But for me, Drake London shoots right up. Wide receiver 14 I'm seeing is Devonta Smith. I think that's a guy that Drake London should be right there neck and neck with. As far as Kyle Pitts goes, Cousins, he had a big year with Hawkinson last year, so there's definitely that ability in the offense with him. It's just going to be a better offense. They're going to throw the ball finally. It's going to be great and wonderful. Pitts, I think it depends on how you feel about Kyle Pitts, the player. Now that he does have this quarterback, though, I think that's an outstanding thing for him as well. He shoots right up the board. Probably, it's going to be tough between him and Trey McBride, I think, for me. Andrews and Kelsey are obviously the top two for redraft purposes. Going into next year, once again, for me, I think Laporta will probably be my tight end 3. He could leapfrog Andrews. I think for me, I do prefer Andrews. It has nothing to do with the shirt I'm wearing. I promise you that. I think Kincaid and Pitts, we'll see where Brock Bowers winds up, and then Trey McBride. That's going to be kind of the crew right there as kind of the second tier of tight ends. Let's talk about Kirk Cousins himself as a quarterback. Last year, he was excellent for Minnesota. The volume was really the king for him, though. And he's a guy who's always had volume. That's a thing I don't really think is going to be there for him in his favor in Atlanta, though. I think this is going to keep him kind of in more of the low-end QB1, higher-end QB2 kind of range. Almost think of like a Brock Purdy, because Kirk is not going to run the ball at all. He's not going to have anything with his legs. And I really think with this offense, I don't think they're going to go from... I don't think they're going to suddenly be top 7 in pass attempts. I think they're just going to be kind of more average, which is still a huge jump for those weapons. But for Kirk, that is a step down in pass attempts. So I think that brings him more into, kind of where Tua maybe ended up, where Jared Goff kind of lives, kind of that QB 12 to 15 kind of range is probably where I'm feeling about Kirk Cousins. This is a great NFL move. This is a great move for those weapons. For Kirk himself, I'm not in love with it for fantasy purposes, but really other than going somewhere where he was going to have massive volume, which really would have been back in Minnesota. There was never really any other spot I was going to totally love for Kirk. Maybe Vegas as well. Just kind of thinking about what they've got around him. But no, this is a great spot for Kirk Cousins in real life. This is a great spot for all those weapons. For Bijan also, by the way, this is a win for Bijan Robinson. I think this really solidifies him probably as my RB2. He probably was already, right? But adding Kirk Cousins in there, there's going to be some throws to the running backs then because Kirk's not a running quarterback himself. Also there's going to be more opportunities to score. So great news all around there for Atlanta. Kirk Cousins, more of a QB2 than a QB1 for me, kind of a lower-end QB1. Saquon Barkley, like I said, I think I forgot Jonathan Taylor. I think I would still probably have Taylor over Saquon. So I think Saquon probably goes up to my RB6 for redraft. And then for Dynasty, I guess the same because it's running backs for Dynasty, right? That's kind of how that works. Another day of NFL free agency is wrapped up, guys. What's up? It's Matt Mormon here, the ADP Average News Podcast. I'm going to go through some of the moves I didn't quite get a chance to yesterday, and then some of the moves that happened today as we had yet another very active day across the NFL with some teams adding on some players. Let's start out with my favorite team, the Baltimore Ravens, adding Derrick Henry to their backfield on a 2-year deal. The 30-year-old running back, as a Baltimore Ravens fan, don't love this. I don't think signing a 30-year-old running back is very good. I feel like we learned that in 2014, but here we are in 2024 doing it still. However, if anyone can make it work, if anybody can be an anomaly, Derrick Henry probably is that guy. But I would rather not bet on the anomaly happening, but that's where we are at with the Baltimore Ravens. The good news here for Derrick Henry is I think this is as good of a landing spot as you could possibly hoped. For his own personal fantasy value, I think that the Ravens run scheme is going to really help him out quite a bit. He gets to basically kind of just be a really, really more talented, bigger version of Gus Edwards. And we've seen how good Gus Edwards has been in this offense and how the skill set for the Ravens offense does not need to be the same skill set as others. I mentioned yesterday a little bit talking about DeAndre Swift going to the Bears, how this is really going to unlock his potential as a pass catcher in Chicago. Well, Derrick Henry's never caught passes, and Baltimore's not an offense where you need to catch passes. He's going to be a goal line back, he's going to be between the tackles back, and he gets to kind of get a lot of the pressure alleviated off of him because of Lamar Jackson. I think this is as good of a move as it can possibly be for Derrick Henry. Later on this week, I will have updated rankings for everybody, so keep me on the lookout for those. But I kind of expect Derrick Henry to be basically where I would have had him before free agency. I think this is probably the best landing spot for him. Let's go to another old running back here. Let's go to Austin Eckler, signing with the Washington Football Red Commanders. And I don't love this one for him. I kind of feel like this is maybe just an upgrade over the Antonio Gibson role, which we all know has been very frustrating. Of course, new coaches in place. But I don't love it. I think that he would have been really good going to a team with a bit more high octane offense. It's going to be a rookie quarterback in there. You've already got Terry McLaurin taking a lot of passes in this offense, and Brian Robinson's going to be taking a ton of the rushing work. Not that Eckler's a guy who needs rushing work, but I kind of feel like you need the touchdown opportunities for Austin Eckler to rebound. I think at this point, the ship has sailed on him ever being a true RB1 again, but can he be a RB2 PPR reliant back? That could be in the cards, but it's not a bet I'm going to want to make. I actually think Brian Robinson could be a little interesting coming out of this if his value does get diminished a bit by having a big name in the backfield alongside him. Since we're talking about the Washington backfield, let's talk about the guy who left town there, Antonio Gibson. I was kind of hopeful for Gibson to land somewhere that could be a little bit fun. Quite frankly, LA, right? If he could just replace if he could replace Austin Eckler out there, I thought that could have been interesting for him. He goes to New England. Not a very fun and exciting place for sure. One of these two backs is probably going to have Jaden Daniels as their quarterback between Eckler and Gibson. So that's going to take away even more pass catching opportunities for one of these two guys. We'll see which one it is and kind of how that shakes out with the draft here in just a couple months. But yeah, no, that's not going to be great for either one of those guys. Another guy probably going to have a rookie quarterback. They did sign Jacoby Brissett today, but I don't really expect him to be the starter. Maybe he's a bridge guy to get out a rookie, plays the first few games. That could happen there, but Gibson, not very excited. Let's talk about a running back who is a little bit more exciting, though. That's Zach Moss. He goes to Cincinnati. Cincinnati then ships Joe Mixon to Houston. So let's break down both sides. Let's start with Zach Moss first, going to Cincinnati. Great opportunity for a great workload there. It does feel a little trappy, though, as we've seen this before. Kind of middling free agent running back, signs to a rather team-friendly kind of deal, and we kind of just anoint him, he's going to get workload, and then he's not very good with it, and a younger player takes that spot. So Chase Brown, I think, moves up for me as a handcuff here. Zach Moss, I think you're going to have to assume that he's going to get a big workload at the moment. However, I could definitely also see that workload going away very quickly if he's not very good. And as good as he was with Jonathan Taylor out for a little bit last year, we've got a lot of Zach Moss just kind of being a plotter and not being great. Chase Brown definitely becomes a bit of a guy who I become a bit more interested in. Let's talk about the Joe Mixon side of that equation. Now he goes to Houston. Very exciting for Joe Mixon. He was going to get cut, and then Houston swooped in and said, well, we'll just call dibs on it. And we'll send you a pick to get him. And I think it's a great spot for Joe Mixon to be in. Dameon Pierce becomes his only competition in that backfield. That doesn't worry me too much. Pierce kind of slots in there as a handcuff option there. But for Mixon, it's an opportunity to basically just be in a very similar situation what he was in Houston or in Cincinnati. The running back, the lead back for a high-scoring offense. And that's a really, really good opportunity to have if you're Joe Mixon. Look, Devin Singletary, not the most impressive runner in the world, and he just had a really nice stretch of value this past season. So Joe Mixon, I think, pretty well holds his value through this whole thing, despite moving on from the Bengals. Speaking of Devin Singletary, it's funny, we had this whole musical chairs at running back this offseason because of some of these guys being available. Let's talk about Devin Singletary then, who he goes to the New York Giants replacing Saquon Barkley, who's now in Philadelphia. You can check that out from yesterday. So Devin Singletary to the Giants. This is going to be one of those guys who gets a lot of work but doesn't get to do a whole lot with it. Saquon Barkley, because he is just so good, was kind of able to make chicken salad out of chicken poop. I don't love the situation in New York. It's not a very good offense. They're not going to score a lot. They're not going to throw the ball to the running back very much. And so that puts Devin Singletary kind of in... A guy like, I guess Chuba Hubbard is maybe a pretty good comparison for kind of where I feel I'll be with Devin Singletary, except Hubbard does have Sanders there, at least taking some of it. I don't love that situation. If you're a running back and you're not catching passes and you're not scoring touchdowns, what are you really doing for me? And so that's where I'm going to kind of be, I think, with Devin Singletary. Another guy changing places yesterday in kind of a similar situation, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones. So yesterday when I recorded, the story was out that Josh Jacobs was signing with Green Bay. Now at that point in time, Josh Jacobs was going to stick around in Green Bay. Aaron Jones was going to stick around in Green Bay. And then it came out they're going to cut Aaron Jones. He then becomes a free agent. He gets shipped up to Minnesota. So following the footsteps of what feels like so many Green Bay Packers, of going from the Packers up to the Vikings, Greg Jennings definitely being one of the first ones that comes to mind. Brett Favre, of course, the Jets stay in there, but I feel like a lot of Packers end up in Minnesota. And Aaron Jones, the latest one to do that. I'm not going to be in on Aaron Jones. I've kind of been penciling in the Vikings running back as kind of a dead spot to me. Was nervous they were going to draft one of these highly rated guys, or highest they can be rated with this class, in the draft this year. To me, it's just not an offense that really bodes much for runners, and Jones at his age is not something I'm really all that interested in. Also, they got a new quarterback. We'll touch on that in just a second here, and that gives me a lot of hesitation for what this offense is going to be in 2024. One more running back I do just want to touch on is Gus Edwards. Love the Gus bus, and so does Greg Roman. And so Gus Edwards heading to the LA Chargers. This is probably the easiest one to predict in the entire world. It's an inexpensive backup running back contract to send him to the Chargers. It does make me think that they'll draft a running back for sure, one who will be the lead back, and then Gus can be just a reliable set of hands in that backfield for his 8 to 10 touches per game. Let's talk real quick about wide receiver because there's just no wide receiver news at all. Darnell Mooney, really the only one to sign. Yesterday we had Gabe Davis go off the board. You can check that one out here too. But Darnell Mooney going to Atlanta, to me, that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to have happen, where it's a guy who at least is something on that side of the field in order to kind of keep defenses honest. It helps Kirk Cousins out a little bit, but it's not a guy who I'm worried about getting in the way of either Pitts or London. And so it's kind of the best of all worlds. And it's also a guy where, unfortunately, this is fantasy football. This is unfortunately the way kind of things go. You have to prepare for injuries do occur. And he's a guy where if something were to happen to Pitts or to London, I think Darnell Mooney is a guy who could step in and have some real potential then as one of the higher up options in the offense. Not saying he'd be great and amazing. It's not going to be Jordan Addison of last year, but he's a guy who could have some flex appeal, even some wide receiver 2 in the right matchups. Kirk Cousins being his quarterback, of course, is going to help that out as well. And for Kirk, this is also really good. It wasn't that long ago in Minnesota where we saw Kirk Cousins really making hay with a lot of weapons, and at least this solidifies one other spot in a spot where he will have a weapon. So that's really, really good for him. The last thing I do want to talk about, mentioning Kirk Cousins, got to go back to the Minnesota Vikings here. Sam Darnold does sign on as quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. This to me is about as disappointing as it can be for a starting quarterback, for a bridge quarterback, which I'm sure this is. This is simply a placeholder for a rookie. I think probably J.J. McCarthy. And it's disappointing, though. Jameis Winston is really the kind of guy I wanted it to be. He signs with Cleveland as a backup behind Deshaun Watson. Gardner Minshew signs on with the Las Vegas Raiders. He's going to compete there with Aiden O'Connell, and then who knows, maybe they go get a quarterback as well in this draft. So, or Justin Fields just totally usurps that. That's most likely. But Sam Darnold in Minnesota, it gives me a lot of pause on Justin Jefferson, because he is Justin Jefferson. And this is the kind of thing that, man, we are literally, it is mid-March. We're not making decisions here, right? I've got a whole summer to go back and forth on Justin Jefferson, but this is the kind of thing that can happen that makes me think to myself, CeeDee Lamb wide receiver 1. And CeeDee Lamb in PPR redraft is CeeDee Lamb first overall now, because if Sam Darnold is your guy for 6 weeks at most, let's say it's 6 weeks of Sam Darnold, man, those are 6 weeks where there's a chance that Justin Jefferson is even in trouble. So that's very concerning. Jordan Addison, I think for dynasty purposes, if you're rebuilding, this is a great chance to target him. And for Jefferson too, right? For dynasty purposes. It's a pretty short-term situation with Darnold. However, for those redraft leagues, which that's the primary source of fantasy football, Sam Darnold for any amount of time is not a good thing for your wide receivers, no matter who you are. I think that checks all of my boxes as far as the free agents I need to hit on. There are just a couple of them still kind of hanging out there. Most are gone at this point, but really the wide receivers. It's kind of weird to see running backs flying off the board like this. Meanwhile, Hollywood Brown and Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd are all kind of still waiting at home for those phone calls, get their paychecks. So there you go, guys. Again, thank you so much for joining me here as we go through this crazy roller coaster known as the NFL free agency tampering period. I'm sure there'll be more moves. And so you can come right back here. I'm going to give you more and more content just like those of kind of those bite-sized pieces there of, quick hit reactions. So if you guys want to check out things, I've got some other things right here where you can check out in the meantime. Until then, I will see you guys when there's more moves that happen.